Most men will never admit this out loud, but the way men think about older women is very different from how they talk about them. If you ask a man directly, he'll usually give a polite, socially acceptable answer. He'll say things like, "Age doesn't matter," or "Connection is everything." But inside his nervous system, inside his biology, a completely different conversation is happening. And if you don't understand that internal conversation, you'll misunderstand almost every interaction between men and older women. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Men don't evaluate older women emotionally first. They evaluate them biologically first, even when they believe they're being logical. This isn't cruelty, and it isn't disrespect. It's wiring. Male attraction is heavily tied to visual cues, reproductive signaling, and perceived vitality. That doesn't disappear just because a man becomes mature, educated, or emotionally intelligent. It only becomes quieter and more controlled. But it never leaves. In the first few seconds a man encounters an older woman, his brain runs a rapid, unconscious scan. This scan is not about age in numbers. It's about energy, posture, eye contact, voice tone, and emotional steadiness. Men are not asking, "How old is she?" They are asking, "Is she calm or chaotic? Is she secure or demanding? Is she warm or guarded?" These signals matter more to men than most people realize, especially as men age themselves. This is why some older women are instantly magnetic to men, while others feel invisible, even if they are conventionally attractive. Men respond strongly to emotional regulation. An older woman who appears settled in herself sends a powerful signal to the male nervous system: safety without boredom. And that combination is rare. Younger women often signal excitement, but instability. Older women, when they are grounded, signal depth without drama. For many men, especially those who've lived long enough to be burned by emotional volatility, this is deeply attractive. But there's another layer most people ignore. Men also associate older women with judgment. Not because older women are judgmental, but because men project their own insecurities onto them. An older woman feels like someone who can see through him. Younger women feel easier to impress. Older women feel harder to deceive. This creates a strange internal conflict in men. Attraction mixed with self-consciousness. Desire mixed with fear of being exposed. This is why many men flirt more cautiously with older women, not because they're less interested, but because the stakes feel higher. With an older woman, a man feels that his words matter more, his actions matter more, and his weaknesses are more visible. That pressure makes some men withdraw, even when attraction is present. From the outside, it looks like disinterest. Internally, it's often intimidation. There is also a sexual misconception that needs to be addressed honestly. Many men secretly believe older women are either uninterested in intimacy or overly intense about it. Both beliefs are wrong, but they influence male behavior. Men who believe older women are uninterested hesitate to initiate. Men who believe older women are too intense fear losing control. Either way, hesitation replaces clarity, and hesitation kills momentum. Physiologically, men respond strongly to emotional cues that suggest receptivity. An older woman who communicates interest subtly through relaxed body language and warm responsiveness activates desire far more effectively than overt flirting. Men are not turned on by effort. They are turned on by ease. This is where older women often have an advantage they don't realize. When an older woman stops trying to perform and simply allows attraction to exist, men feel invited rather than pressured. Another hard truth is this: men compartmentalize attraction. A man can deeply respect an older woman and still feel sexual interest, but he may struggle to reconcile the two internally. Society has trained men to separate admiration from desire when it comes to age. This creates cognitive dissonance. He wants her, but he doesn't know how to want her without feeling confused about what that says about him. So instead of resolving the conflict, he avoids it. Men also think about consequences more with older women. With younger women, men often think short-term. With older women, they think long-term, even when they don't intend to. An older woman feels like a decision, not a distraction. That perception alone changes male behaviour dramatically. It slows him down. It makes him cautious. And sometimes it makes him disappear, even though interest was genuine. What most men don't realise is that older women are often reading male hesitation incorrectly. They assume lack of attraction when the reality is internal conflict. They assume disinterest when the reality is overthinking. Men rarely say, "I'm attracted to you, but I don't feel confident enough to act." Instead, they go quiet. Silence becomes their defence mechanism. This silence is not rejection. It is emotional processing. And unless you understand how men think at this level, silence will always feel personal when it often isn't. This is only the surface. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the exact fears men associate with older women, how past relationships shape these fears, and why some men feel more alive with older women than they ever did with younger ones, even when they don't know how to admit it. When men think about older women, one of the strongest forces shaping their behaviour is not attraction itself, but fear. Not surface-level fear that they can name, but quiet, internal fear that operates underneath logic. This fear doesn't come from older women directly. It comes from men's past experiences, their failures, and their unresolved shame. Older women, simply by existing with experience and emotional depth, tend to activate these internal memories. Many men associate older women with emotional accuracy. An older woman feels like someone who will notice inconsistencies, half-truths, and weak intent. For men who have relied on charm, avoidance, or surface confidence in the past, this creates discomfort. They sense that shortcuts won't work. This doesn't reduce attraction. It intensifies self-awareness. And self-awareness for many men is uncomfortable. Another layer is performance anxiety, but not in the way people usually think. It's not just sexual performance, it's life performance. Older women trigger questions in a man's mind like, "Am I where I should be? Do I have enough to offer? Will she see my limitations?" Younger women often symbolize potential and flexibility. Older women symbolize evaluation and reality. That contrast changes how men behave. Physiologically, stress and attraction can coexist. When a man is attracted to an older woman, his nervous system can experience both desire and cortisol-driven alertness at the same time. Desire pulls him closer. Stress tells him to be careful. This creates hesitation. He may overthink texts, delay invitations, or wait for clearer signals than he would need with a younger woman. From the outside, this looks like passivity. Internally, it's self-protection. There's also the issue of male identity. Men are taught directly and indirectly that their value comes from competence, leadership, and progression. Older women are often perceived as already established in their emotional identity. That can make some men feel like they're entering a space where they're being measured instead of admired. For men who derive confidence from being the guide or the expert, this dynamic feels unfamiliar. Interestingly, men who are secure in themselves often find older women easier to connect with. They don't feel the need to impress. They don't fear being seen clearly. They experience older women as partners rather than tests. This is why you'll notice a pattern. Emotionally grounded men are more direct with older women, while insecure men oscillate between intense interest and sudden withdrawal. Another misunderstood factor is sexual imagination. Many men privately associate older women with depth rather than novelty. This can be intensely arousing, but also intimidating. Depth suggests emotional presence, responsiveness, and mutual awareness. For men who have relied on surface-level physical excitement, This feels like unfamiliar territory. They want it, but they don't know how to engage with it without feeling exposed. Men also think about social perception more than they admit, not because they care deeply about opinions, but because age dynamics activate identity questions. What does this say about me? Becomes a silent loop. Some men fear being judged as immature. Others fear being judged as inadequate. These fears don't necessarily stop attraction, but they often slow action. Another crucial point is how men interpret older women's independence. Many men find it attractive, but also destabilizing. Independence removes the illusion that he is needed. And while men say they want independent women, part of male psychology is wired to feel valuable when needed. An older woman who is self-sufficient can unintentionally trigger a man's fear of being irrelevant. This doesn't mean he wants dependence. It means he wants significance. This is why subtle appreciation matters more than overt praise. Men don't need to be flattered. They need to feel impactful. When an older woman acknowledges a man's presence, insight or steadiness, without making him feel responsible for her happiness, his attraction deepens. His nervous system relaxes. He stops performing and starts connecting. Men also think about time differently with older women. There is an unspoken awareness that moments matter. This creates intensity. Intensity can be beautiful, but it can also scare men who are accustomed to drifting. With older women, drifting feels disrespectful, so men either step up or step away. Rarely do they stay ambiguous for long, unless fear keeps them stuck. One of the most damaging myths is that men prefer younger women because they are easier. The truth is more complex. Men often feel less seen by younger women and more understood by older women. But being understood requires emotional honesty, and honesty requires courage. Many men haven't developed that courage yet. When men pull back from older women, it is often not because attraction faded, but because internal pressure increased. They felt something real, and real things demand real presence. Silence becomes their escape hatch, not because they don't care, but because they care and don't know how to manage it. Understanding this changes everything. It shifts the interpretation of male behaviour from personal rejection to internal conflict. And once you see this pattern, you stop chasing clarity from men who are still negotiating with themselves. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into how men differentiate desire, respect, and long-term bonding with older women, and why some men never forget the older woman who truly saw them, even years later. As men continue to process their attraction toward older women, a subtle but powerful distinction begins to form in their minds: the difference between desire and respect. With younger women, these two feelings often stay separate. Desire can exist without respect. Respect can exist without deep desire. But with older women, the two collide, and that collision is what makes the experience so intense and sometimes so destabilizing for men. When a man desires an older woman, he often feels that his desire has weight. It feels intentional, not impulsive. This is because older women tend to engage emotionally in a way that mirrors a man's internal state back to him. She doesn't just receive attention, she reflects it. That reflection forces a man to confront his intentions. And many men are not used to being confronted by their own desire. Respect complicates things further. Men instinctively respect experience, emotional clarity, and boundaries. Older women often embody all three. This creates a situation where a man may want to pursue, but also feels a responsibility to behave differently. He may censor himself. He may hesitate to flirt the way he normally would. He may fear crossing a line that he doesn't fully understand yet. This restraint is not lack of attraction. It's over-regulation. Physiologically, respect activates a different neural response than raw desire. Desire pushes toward action. Respect pushes toward caution. When both are present, the nervous system slows down. Men become deliberate. They think before speaking. They pause before touching. This can feel romantic and intentional, but it can also feel paralyzing if the man lacks emotional confidence. Another important factor is memory formation. Men encode emotionally intense experiences more deeply when there is meaning attached. Older women often represent a chapter rather than a moment. Even brief interactions can leave a lasting imprint because the emotional tone is different. It's not just stimulation, it's resonance. This is why many men remember older women with unusual clarity, even when the relationship never fully formed. Men also think about compatibility differently with older women. With younger women, compatibility is often projected into the future. With older women, compatibility is assessed in the present. Men ask themselves, often unconsciously, do we align right now? That immediacy removes fantasy and replaces it with realism. For some men, this is refreshing. For others, it's confronting. There is also a shift in how men experience validation. Younger women often validate men through admiration. Older women validate men through recognition. Admiration inflates the ego. Recognition grounds it. Men who are still seeking ego reinforcement may feel more comfortable with admiration. Men who are seeking emotional grounding feel drawn to recognition. This explains why men at different life stages respond so differently to older women. Sexually, men often associate older women with presence rather than performance. This can be deeply attractive, but it also removes the scripts men rely on. There is less guessing, less pretending, and fewer roles to hide behind. For men who have used sexuality as a way to escape emotional exposure, this feels unfamiliar. They want the connection, but they fear the vulnerability that comes with it. Directly, her energy communicates expectation. This forces men to confront whether they are willing to show up consistently. Inconsistency feels more noticeable in this dynamic, and inconsistency brings shame for men who value integrity, even if they struggle to live up to it. One of the reasons some men suddenly disappear from older women's lives is because they realize they are being invited into something real. Real connection requires presence. Presence requires alignment between words and actions. And alignment is uncomfortable for men who are still fragmented internally. Disappearing becomes easier than integrating. At the same time, men who are emotionally aligned often experience older women as stabilizing. Their nervous systems calm. They feel less need to prove themselves. Conversation flows more naturally. Silence feels comfortable rather than awkward. This is why men who have experienced a healthy connection with an older woman often describe it as grounding, even years later. Another rarely discussed aspect is how older women affect men's sense of time. With younger women, men often feel ahead of the timeline. With older women, they feel synchronized. This synchronization creates intimacy. It also creates urgency. Men become aware that moments matter. This awareness can deepen connection or trigger avoidance, depending on emotional readiness. Men don't always articulate these experiences clearly. Instead, they describe them vaguely as different or intense. But the difference lies in how older women activate multiple layers of male psychology simultaneously: desire, respect, memory, identity, and accountability. Few dynamics do this as consistently. Understanding this helps explain why some men never fully move on from an older woman who touched them deeply. Even if the relationship was brief, it felt complete in a way that lingered. It wasn't about quantity of time, but quality of presence. In the next part, we'll explore how men differentiate between attraction to older women and commitment with them, and why some men want the connection but resist the responsibility that comes with it. When men think about older women, commitment becomes a far more complicated internal discussion than attraction. Desire can be felt instantly. connection can grow naturally, but commitment triggers a different part of the male mind altogether. With older women, commitment doesn't feel hypothetical. It feels immediate, and that immediacy is what many men struggle with. For many men, older women represent clarity. Clarity about expectations, emotional boundaries, and relational direction. Younger women often symbolize exploration. Older women symbolize decision. And while men often say they want decisiveness, the truth is that decisiveness removes the comfort of ambiguity. Ambiguity allows men to enjoy connection without accountability. Older women quietly reduce that space. This is why some men maintain emotional closeness with older women but resist defining the relationship. They want the grounding presence, the emotional intelligence, and the intimacy. But they hesitate when those elements begin to imply continuity. It's not that they don't value the connection, it's that continuity demands consistency, and consistency exposes weaknesses men would rather hide. Another layer is how men associate older women with permanence. This isn't about age in years, it's about emotional tone. Older women often communicate in a way that feels settled rather than searching. For men who are still internally unsettled, this contrast can be destabilizing. They fear being anchored before they feel ready to anchor themselves. Physiologically, commitment triggers stress responses in men who associate it with loss of autonomy. When attraction and commitment collide too quickly, cortisol increases. This can cause withdrawal, irritability, or emotional distancing. The man may still feel desire, but his nervous system interprets commitment as pressure. Without emotional tools to regulate that pressure, avoidance becomes the default response. Men also fear disappointing older women more than they fear disappointing younger women. This is rarely conscious. Older women feel like they have less tolerance for excuses. Men project an expectation of emotional maturity onto them. Even when that expectation isn't voiced, it shapes behavior. A man may think, "She deserves better than my uncertainty," and then remove himself rather than confront his uncertainty. There is also a deep, unspoken fear related to comparison. Older women carry lived experience. Men imagine being measured against past partners, past relationships, past standards. Whether or not this is actually happening, the perception alone is enough to trigger insecurity. Instead of asking questions or expressing vulnerability, many men retreat to protect their self-image. At the same time, men who are emotionally ready often experience the opposite effect. They feel relief. With older women, there is less guessing, less drama, and fewer games. Communication feels cleaner. Conflict feels more resolvable. This clarity allows emotionally mature men to relax into commitment rather than fear it. For them, older women represent partnership, not pressure. Another important factor is how men interpret older women's independence in the context of commitment. Independence can feel threatening to men who equate commitment with being needed. But emotionally secure men interpret independence as freedom to choose. When an older woman chooses a man without needing him, that choice carries weight. It feels earned rather than assumed. Men also think about time differently when considering commitment with older women. There is less room for procrastination. Decisions feel more consequential. This awareness can accelerate bonding or trigger avoidance. Men who are comfortable with intentional living move closer. Men who prefer drifting move away. One of the most painful misunderstandings occurs when older women interpret a man's hesitation as lack of attraction or lack of seriousness. In many cases, the attraction is real and the interest is sincere. The hesitation comes from internal conflict, not external disinterest. The man is negotiating with his identity, his fears, and his sense of readiness. Men rarely communicate this struggle clearly. Instead, they use vague language. They say they need time. They say they're unsure. They say they don't want to rush things. These statements are often true, but incomplete. What they really mean is, I feel something real, and I'm afraid of what it requires from me. For men who eventually step away, the departure is often accompanied by quiet regret. Not dramatic heartbreak, but a lingering sense of having walked away from something meaningful. This regret can resurface years later, especially when they encounter emotional depth elsewhere and realize how rare it is. Understanding this dynamic allows older women to interpret male behavior with greater clarity and less self-blame. It shifts the narrative from "I wasn't enough" to "he wasn't ready." That distinction matters. It preserves dignity. It preserves self-trust. In the next part, we'll explore how men's early relationship experiences shape their attraction to older women, and why some men are drawn to older women specifically after emotional loss or personal failure. When men develop attraction toward older women, that attraction is rarely created in isolation. It is usually shaped by their emotional history, especially their early relationship experiences and personal failures. Many men are drawn toward older women not simply because of age preference, but because older women represent emotional environments that feel different from what they experienced before. To understand how men think about older women, you have to understand how men process emotional pain. A large number of men develop emotional restraint early in life. They learn, often unconsciously, that vulnerability leads to rejection, embarrassment, or loss of control. Because of this, they create identities built around competence, humor, or distance. These identities work well in casual interactions and short-term relationships, but they often collapse when deeper emotional connection is required. When such men encounter older women, they sense a different emotional climate, one that invites honesty rather than performance. Older women often communicate interest through attentiveness rather than excitement. This difference matters. Younger emotional dynamics often revolve around stimulation and novelty. Older emotional dynamics revolve around awareness and presence. For men who have grown tired of chasing stimulation, this shift feels calming. It feels safe. And safety is a powerful biological trigger for attachment in men, even though it is rarely discussed. Physiologically, men attach more strongly when they feel emotionally accepted without having to prove themselves constantly. Older women often create that environment unintentionally through stable communication patterns and reduced tolerance for emotional games. When a man experiences this kind of emotional steadiness, oxytocin levels increase during bonding interactions. This hormone strengthens feelings of trust and connection. Men may not understand the chemistry, but they feel the effect as emotional comfort. Many men are also drawn toward older women after experiencing betrayal or emotional disappointment with partners who relied heavily on drama, inconsistency, or attention-seeking behavior. These experiences create emotional fatigue. Emotional fatigue changes male attraction patterns. Men begin to associate calmness with desirability. They begin to value predictability. Older women, particularly those who are emotionally grounded, embody these traits. However, this shift in attraction can create internal confusion for men. Society teaches them to associate youth with desirability. When their internal desires begin aligning with emotional depth instead, they experience cognitive dissonance. They question their preferences. They wonder whether they are choosing stability out of growth or out of fear of being hurt again. This uncertainty sometimes makes them slow to commit, even when the attraction is strong. Another powerful factor is how men associate older women with emotional mentorship, even when they don't consciously realize it. This doesn't mean they want to be guided or controlled. It means they sense emotional intelligence that they can learn from. Men are biologically responsive to environments that allow skill development. Emotional skill development is no exception. An older woman who models healthy communication, emotional regulation, and clear boundaries activates a man's desire to evolve. At the same time, This dynamic can trigger insecurity. Learning requires admitting limitations. For men whose identity depends on appearing strong and capable, admitting emotional limitations feels threatening. Instead of embracing growth, they may distance themselves from the relationship that exposed their vulnerability. This is one of the paradoxes of male psychology. Men often retreat from the environments that would help them grow the most. Men who have experienced personal failure, whether in career, relationships, or identity, are also more likely to be drawn toward older women. Failure disrupts ego-based attraction patterns. It forces introspection. During this introspective phase, men begin valuing emotional compatibility over social validation. Older women often represent authenticity rather than performance. This authenticity becomes deeply attractive to men who are rebuilding themselves. There is also a neurological component related to memory and emotional imprinting. Men tend to form stronger emotional imprints during periods of vulnerability. If a man meets an older woman while navigating loss, transition, or identity shifts, his brain links her presence with emotional recovery. This creates attachment that feels unusually deep, even if the relationship duration is short. Another element shaping male thought is how older women communicate conflict. Many older women approach disagreement with directness rather than emotional escalation. This reduces stress responses in men. High conflict environments activate male defensive mechanisms, often leading to emotional shutdown. Calm, structured conflict communication, which older women frequently practice, allows men to stay emotionally engaged without feeling threatened. Men also associate older women with emotional realism. Older women often communicate expectations clearly, not through hints or passive signals. While some men initially find this intimidating, it eventually creates relief. Clarity reduces anxiety. Men know where they stand. They know what is expected. This allows them to focus on connection rather than decoding mixed signals. Despite these benefits, men sometimes sabotage connections with older women because the relationship feels too revealing. Emotional intimacy removes masks. Men who have relied on masks for self-protection may unconsciously destabilize relationships that require authenticity. They may create distance, conflict, or sudden detachment, not because the connection lacks value, but because it feels too real. Understanding these psychological layers reveals a deeper truth. Men are not only attracted to older women for who they are externally. They are often drawn to how older women make them feel internally, calmer, more seen, more emotionally grounded. This internal transformation can be powerful, but it also requires men to confront parts of themselves they may have avoided for years. In the next part, we will explore how men sexually perceive older women on a deeper physiological level, and why intimacy with older women often feels emotionally different for men compared to their experiences with younger partners. When men think about older women sexually, their thoughts are far more complex than society assumes. It is not simply about age or experience. It is about how desire changes when male psychology matures. As men grow emotionally and neurologically, their attraction shifts from visual novelty toward embodied presence. Older women often embody that presence in a way younger women cannot yet access. Sexual desire in men is strongly influenced by emotional regulation. When a man feels emotionally safe, his arousal patterns become deeper and more sustained, rather than impulsive and fleeting. Older women often create this emotional safety unintentionally. They are less likely to perform sexuality for validation and more likely to inhabit it naturally. This authenticity activates a different level of male desire. From a physiological standpoint, male arousal is not just testosterone-driven. Cortisol, the stress hormone, plays a massive role. High stress suppresses deep arousal and intimacy. Younger relational dynamics often involve uncertainty, jealousy triggers, and performance anxiety, all of which elevate cortisol. Older women typically reduce these stresses. When cortisol drops, male arousal becomes fuller, slower, and more connected. Men often report that intimacy with older women feels more grounded. This is because the nervous system is relaxed. The parasympathetic system, responsible for rest, connection, and bonding, becomes dominant. This leads to stronger erections, longer endurance, and more emotional presence during intimacy. Men may not consciously understand the biology, but they feel the difference. Another important factor is how older women relate to their bodies. Many older women have moved past constant self-surveillance. They are less focused on how they look and more focused on how they feel. This body confidence is contagious. Men mirror emotional states. When a man senses comfort rather than insecurity, his desire increases rather than decreases. Men also associate older women with sexual clarity. Older women tend to communicate preferences directly instead of expecting men to guess. This clarity removes performance anxiety. Men no longer feel like they are being evaluated, they feel invited. Invitation is far more arousing than approval-seeking dynamics. It activates male initiative rather than male anxiety. Psychologically, men often feel more desired by older women. Younger attraction can feel competitive, as if attention could be withdrawn at any moment. Older attraction feels intentional. Men interpret this intentionality as genuine desire rather than validation seeking. Feeling genuinely desired is a powerful trigger for male sexual confidence. There is also a strong imprinting effect. Men often imprint sexually during emotionally meaningful experiences. If a man experiences emotionally attuned intimacy with an older woman, his brain links arousal with emotional depth. This can permanently reshape his preferences. He may later find surface-level attraction less satisfying, even if it is visually stimulating.